This is Scott Sattler taking you through a trip I did 2 weeks ago down to the Owyhee Canyon area in southeast Oregon, southwest Idaho. It's right on the border there. Drove down from Seattle. It's about 467 miles from Seattle door to door. So the first day I drove down to roughly Walla Walla and then headed south on the Oregon BDR and stopped at about Emily Mountain Road, where I found a campsite just north of the highway. Actually, it was quite a nice campsite, really grassy, a little reservoir there. Set up camp, cooked some steaks and made some biscuits and did some wildflower photography, and then set up my telescope in this big open field and got some nice shots of the Andromeda galaxy, and then went to bed. The next morning I woke up, headed south on Highway 84 all the way down to about Homedale, and jumped on Sucre Creek Road, made it all the way down to Leslie Gulch. And my second night I camped just off of Leslie Gulch Road on a nice hillside campsite I found. Beautiful sunset, golden hour, got some great shots of Three Finger Butte to the west of me, and the light was just amazing. Had a really delightful night. And then the next morning woke up, drove down to Leslie Gulch, which is a state park, I believe. Toured around in the really amazing rhyolite rock formations there, and took a nice hike, took some great photos, flew the drone. Actually flew the drone through one of the big gaps in the rocks. I've included that drone footage in the video here. Went down to the reservoir, checked it out. Everything was officially closed because of COVID-19, but people were still fishing, camping. Actually, it was quite busy. And on the way back up from Leslie Gulch Road, I set up the drone along this lonely canyon road to follow me. This is the first time I'd done this, so the drone followed me for maybe, I don't know, a quarter of a mile. And then another car came in the other direction, and somehow the drone picked up the other car, decided it didn't want to follow me anymore, and then decided it wanted to land in the middle of the road. So I saw that on the remote control GPS connection, whipped the truck around, drove back, found the drone sitting safely right in the middle of the road where probably 2 or 3 cars had already driven right by it. Anyway, so it was one of the first of a couple drone-related mishaps during the weekend, or long weekend. But anyway, I jumped back in the truck and started exploring the Board Corral Loop, which is just off of Leslie Gulch Road. There's some fantastic off-road trails there. I believe I was the only truck I saw out there the whole weekend. The rest were side-by-sides. Everyone was super nice. Explored around to some spots that I had previously mapped, and found an absolutely amazing campsite, which I will not describe geographically because I don't want it overrun with people, but I've included multiple photographs of it plus some video. It's fantastic. I named it the Goat Campsite, greatest of all time campsite, because it truly was a dead-end gravel road with a lot of kind of fun four-wheeling to get there. Once I got there, there were some super vertical cliffs that were just absolutely enormous, carved out by wind and water flow, obviously when the Owyhee River was much higher. The cliffs were pockmarked with holes in the lava formations, and all inhabited with various birds. There was pigeons, doves, there was chukar everywhere. All the birds were just calling to each other, and the calls were echoing across the canyon. And it was just magical. It was amazing. I'll never forget it. Took a nice walk down the creek, made it all the way down to the lake. So the lake is about 1.5 miles away from this campsite. But it's just an amazing campsite. There's some hand-built rock corrals that I think were designed to house wild horses a couple hundred years ago when ranchers were collecting wild horses and reselling them to the military for the Civil War effort. So some of those corrals are still available to look at around this campsite, and they're quite beautiful. So I had a good night there. Brought the awning room rather than my rooftop tent for this trip. The awning room super comfortable. Sleep on a cot in it. You can warm it up with a little buddy heater, and actually got quite cold. We're still mid-April at this point. Got down to about 30 degrees overnight. But otherwise peaceful. So woke up the next morning, did some more exploring, and then headed home. So overall, it was just a great trip to a fantastic area that I want to re-explore. There's amazing geography, amazing wildlife, and just an incredibly vast area. And this represents only a fraction of the Owyhee Canyon. The canyon here is adjacent to the Owyhee Reservoir, which is dammed at its northern end near Nyssa. And so obviously the reservoir is quite wide, but further upstream, before the reservoir, the river canyon is quite narrow. And apparently there's some amazing off-roading and sightseeing, camping in that area. So that'll be a future trip, and I can't wait to check that out. So yeah, the Owyhee is just amazing, and I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's quite arid, although there are some collections of water here and there, and there's a lot of springs, but it's essentially high desert. This particular part of the Owyhee Canyon is close enough to civilization where if you did get in trouble, you'd probably run into some people in side-by-sides, and you are relatively close to town. Homedale, Nyssa, Leslie's Gulch are all little towns in that general area that are just east of this particular part of the Owyhee Canyon. I plan on heading back in a couple of weeks. I'm going to bring some friends with me, and I'll put together a video about that trip as well. We're going to explore some of the regions north of where I explored this time, the area between Nyssa and Leslie Gulch. I'll explore a little more thoroughly. And of course there's the west side of the reservoir, which to date I haven't seen, and then the narrower Owyhee Canyon trails that I've read about that are supposed to be amazing. And on top of it, there's at least 3 hot springs. There's a hot spring that's on the northern end of the reservoir. There's another hot spring that's around Leslie Gulch, and then a few more a bit further south. So it's just a super exciting area to check out. And I hope you guys can visit it. Respect the land when you're out here. It's a real privilege to be on this BLM land that's completely undeveloped. So keep it trash free. Clean up your campsites. If you're shooting out here, clean up your brass. Respect the animals. Ranchers are keeping their livestock on the range out here, and they're all are wild horses, coyotes. Just amazing. So anyway, thanks for checking out the Lonesome Realm channel. Hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends about us. I'm based in Seattle, and I love traveling to these remote places to show them to you. Have a great week, everybody. Scott Sattler out.